As the road to reclaiming Kashi opens, a debate is raging in the Hindu ecosphere. The debate has been sparked by lawyer practicing in the Supreme Court, J. Sai Deepak, you can see him there in the middle of your screens, who said 2 days ago on this show that he and fellow lawyer Vishnu Jain were of the opinion that the quest for reclaiming Hindu sites should not stop at just 3 temples or 3 Hindu places of worship which are consequential, but include all 30,000 to 40,000 desecrated temples. J. Sai Deepak's views matter because he is also the counsel for the royal family of Kashi in the case and is demanding a constitutional review of the Places of Worship Act 1991. I hope I've got that right, but that's what I read. Now first listen into J. Sai Deepak making that emphatic and audacious statement to me on the hard facts just 2 days ago, viewers. That interview has of course gone viral. Listen in. You say that if a structure is deemed to be more than 100 years old, the Places of Worship Act doesn't apply. But
correct.
The Supreme Court judgment seems to at least uphold in spirit, I'm not saying letter, in spirit, the Places of Worship Act 1991 with a view to ensuring communal harmony and the provisos of the Constitution that apply to the preservation of our secular ethos. How do we get around this?
So before I answer that question, let me just, let's say, advertise myself a bit. I have written an article which was published barely a few days ago, I think on the 24th of January, explaining this position in the Open magazine, capturing my arguments in detail with respect to the Places of Worship Act, giving 3 different layers of arguments as to why none of those provisions come in the way of reclamation of sites such as Kashi and Mathura. And allow me to say this, my position, and I agree with Vishnu on this, and I think he agrees with me on this, is that we are not just looking at Kashi and Mathura, we are looking at 40,000 sites across the board. Because no one can make a concession on behalf of anybody else. It's like saying, Rahul Shiv Shankar has a dispute with his neighbor on ownership of property. Sai Deepak steps into the picture on behalf of Rahul Shiv Shankar and says, you know what, let's maintain peace and harmony. I will concede this land on behalf of Rahul Shiv Shankar. Who am I to do that? Right? It's a property dispute. It's an ownership of religious property. Therefore, no third party, even if he happens to be or they happen to be the representatives of Hindu or Hindutva according to them, can make any concession on behalf of those interested in reclamation of these sites because it is for the devout, it's for the owners of the property to reclaim. Nobody can make the concession on anybody's behalf.
Viewers, J. Sai Deepak's views, of course, great against the likes of RSS Chief Mohan Bhagwat and a number of observers who feel that looking under every mosque might risk losing the communal peace across the country. Here, for example, is what Mohan Bhagwat has said in an interview about 2 years ago. He said, and I quote, Gyanvapi has a history which we can't change now. Issues of temples which hold special significance in the hearts of Hindus are now being raised. Many feel what was done was to break Hindu morale. A section of Hindus now feels that temples should be reconstructed. One should not raise a new issue every day. On Gyanvapi, what we are doing is fine, but why look for a shivling in every mosque? Unquote. Of course, many Hindus like J. Sai Deepak clearly don't agree with Bhagwat. They claim that if in Islam a mosque is not considered kosher, if it is built on a desecrated site, then it ceases to remain a holy place. Such places which hold no religious significance to Muslims can then be easily relinquished to Hindus in an act of good faith to rectify the wrongs of history. After all, why would today's Muslims want to hang on to a symbol of anti-Hindu bigotry? In fact, Muslims have been advised by leading lights of their own community to trust their Hindu co-citizens and try to earn their goodwill. Here are the stirring words of Begum Azaz Rasool, who was a constituent assembly member, viewers. She was part of the Muslim League, she gave it up. She said, and I quote, I feel it is in the interest of minorities to try to merge themselves into the majority community. It is not going to be harmful to Muslims, I assure them, because in the long run, it will be in their interest to win the goodwill of the majority community, unquote. So viewers, having heard that, having heard Madam Rasool's advice, let's open this up. Let's ask some fundamental questions. How far should we go? Dr. Ranganathan, How far should we go? Should we end with Kashi or Mathura, just 3, and let it go as Mohan Bhagwat ji has said, or should we go beyond?
Rahul, when one goes by logic, morality, first principles, objectivity, as science and the law teach one to do, numbers don't matter. Numbers must not matter. 4 or 40,000 or 4 million or 40 million, each and every cry for justice must be heard. But when one goes by fear, emotion, coercion, subjectivity, scaremongering, numbers matter. So we need to decide where we stand. Will you, for example, say, let us demand reopening of just 3 cases of atrocities against Kashmiri Hindus, only the most prominent ones, of Neelkant Ganju, Girija Tikku, Lassa Kaul. No need to trigger confrontation and hurt sentiments of the other community by asking for reopening of 29,997 other cases. Will you do that? Does justice work that way? Who is to decide that this case has to be opened and looked into and this one not? That is travesty of justice itself. So on the evening that Dr. Mohan Bhagwat said that, I was so outraged, I came on your show and I blasted him in kind words. Can't even remember what words I blasted him in, but that was outrageous, because which is the most glorious of temples? Some people might say that my Kul Devta's temple for me is more precious than Ram Lalla's temple, and he or she might be justified in saying so. And is it not humiliation? Is it not lionizing the debasement that every time that person visits his Kuldev, he sees a mosque there in place of the temple, or people washing their dirty feet where the shivling is? Who is to decide? Who is to get justice? Everyone who cries and knocks at the door of the court must be addressed. That is my standing first principle, and I stick by that forever.
Okay. Mr. Sanjeev Srivastava, leading journalist, senior journalist, you've covered some of these times when Ayodhya played out. You were there. How do you see this? Should a line be drawn in the stone, or should it remain in the shifting sands of time?
So, I never thought that there will be an issue in which I will be fully with Mr. Mohan Bhagwat. So the simple reason is that how far we go back, how many cases we open. I listened to Anand's argument, and like always, there is sound logic and in the manner in which he puts his thoughts across. But then there is no end. What about the other temples or other places of worship, the Buddhist or the other thing? So this is an endless cycle of retribution. So, and then we have our own constitution, and we have this Places of Religious Worship Act. I may be getting the name of the act wrong, but the idea was that let status quo be remained. But I am fully with the Hindu thought, if you may, on the key temples, whether it's Ram temple in Ayodhya, Ram Lalla, or Gyanvyapi or Mathura, or even the 5 more such places come up which kind of convince your logic. But if every place of worship, like Anand says, that numbers shouldn't matter, it should be justice. But this is not justice of some 10 years, 20 years back. You can't go back centuries in history and ask for retribution. Then somebody may, instead of 500 years, somebody may like to go back 2000 years. And then, so that's an endless vicious cycle. And when the Prime Minister and the whole, we are talking about a $10 trillion economy, digital India, make in India. So is this make in India all about converting places of worship? So I think we need to be sensible about it. We need to be rational. We need to put an end to this cycle. After having, and of course the minorities, you quoted Mrs. Rasool, Begum Rasool, if they had voluntarily given Ayodhya and Kashi and Mathura, then so many things would not have happened. But well, they also didn't learn their lesson. But the bottom line is that it cannot be an endless thing or a bottomless pit in terms of reopening cases, because there has to be some kind of a timeline respected.
Okay, I'll come to that point that you raised in the second half. Dr. Ranganathan wants to respond, because I want to bring in Mr. Chaudhary on that last point. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan.
Couple of points. Sanjeev is a wonderful friend, very erudite. But, Sanjeev, when he talks about, we are not talking of recent cases. Well, as Sanjeev, you know, that the Supreme Court twice, not just once, has refused to reopen cases of even of Kashmiri Hindus, atrocities against them, because it says too much time has elapsed. So forget about looking at 500 years. Supreme Court is saying, I'm not even prepared to look back 33 years. So this kind of double speak and double standards has to be removed whenever somebody is asking for justice. Secondly, you said, चलो 3 ले लो, चलो उसके बाद 5 और ले लो, चलो ऐसा करते हैं, धनिया और मिर्ची की तरह 3 और फेंक देता हूं. What is going on out here? Are we reduced ourselves to vegetable sellers ki chalo ye 5 और ले लेते हैं, 6 और ले लेते हैं? I'm sorry, justice doesn't work that way, because that is not democracy. In democracy, everyone has the right to approach the law. We are not saying somebody is going to take over these places of worship that have been, built upon demolished temples. We are legitimately asking for a right to approach the court. What is wrong in that?
That's an interesting point.
It creates bad blood.
It creates bad blood.
Because it is endless. Whatever Buddhist turns up and says that, okay, this Hindu temple was not there, it was a Buddhist place of worship.
Just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds. That's a very important question you asked, and I want to address that, because I have said this, and Rahul knows this, Kamruji knows this. I have said, for me, it is a civilizational issue, not a Hindu issue. If a Muslim brother or sister of mine were to come to me and say that there is a mosque that was demolished by a Hindu king and he built a temple over it, I have said this publicly. I will go with him to the court to seek justice. So this is not a Hindu issue for me at all. And secondly, I want to point you, Sanjeev, my dear friend, to what Mr. Sitaram Goel threw a challenge to Ramila Thapar. Show me one Buddhist temple, Buddhist shrine that was demolished by Hindus. She was not able to show even one. So this bogey that Hindus destroy Buddhist temples, this canard has been going on for decades. This has to be laid to rest as well.
Okay. Kamru Chaudhary, look, if in Islam, and you have testified to this, a mosque is not considered kosher if it is built on a desecrated site, then it ceases to remain a holy place. Obviously, such places, and I presume you would agree with me, would hold no religious meaning to Muslims at all. Can then they be easily relinquished? Maybe a third way, which is a way that we always dance around. I don't know why we dance around this. It creates bad blood. What creates bad blood is, viewers, history, unaddressed. We are constantly told कि भाई peace and reconciliation का एक commission बना लो. That's what Kashmiri Hindus are being told ad nauseum. अब तो judges ने भी बता दिया है. उसमें पहला सवाल ये होता है कि if there has to be reconciliation, there has to be a semblance of the truth and justice. Someone has to speak the truth. Someone has to say, हाँ भाई, some of these mosques were constructed over temples that were deliberately demolished. There were no real sites for us to be involved in. It wasn't as if, it was a holy place for Muslims, but they were demolished to show that we were the rulers and to perhaps break the morale of the Hindu community. And if that is the case, Mr. Chaudhary, then why not just give them back? That would be, as Begum Rasool said, why don't you work to integrate?
Rahul, first and foremost, as I said earlier in your show, we have got a right as an Indian to know what happened in the history. But do we have a right, as per our Indian constitution, to correct that in history? What happened 500, 600 years ago? As Anand says, this is a civilization.
Yes, actually, let me tell you, even the Places of Worship Act, Clause 3A. No, 1 second. Since you say we have a right or not, I'll tell you what Clause 3A says of the Places of Worship Act, sir. It makes a very, very clear distinction. If a place is deemed to be, and I'll just open it up. I just, in fact, have tweeted the exact terms of it also. But if it basically says that if, look, there is a structure that is thought to be historical in nature, then you can, it is exempted, just like the Ayodhya structure is from the Places of Worship Act. So now let me just quote it to you, and it will be very clear, sir. Because are you trying to tell me that, no, hang on, that the temple that has been found, the remains of the temple that have been found that date back to the medieval era are not more than 100 years old? Because if that is the case, sir, then of course we can't have a conversation if you're in that much denial. But let me just read this out to you, because this is fundamentally important. It says, and 3A of the 1991 law, chapter and verse I'm quoting to you. Nothing contained in subsection 1 and subsection 2 shall apply to any place of worship referred to in the said subsections, which is an ancient and historical monument, or an archaeological site, or remains covered by the Ancient Monuments and Archaeological Sites and Remains Act 1958, 24 of 1958, or any other law for the time being in force. So, if this is a historical structure which is recognized as a ancient and historical monument, then sir, sorry to say, we are allowed to go to court and seek recompensation. The constitution allows us. Now answer. Chaudhary sir.
Rahul, it's your show. You can bring in your different angles of editorial. It doesn't matter. But you are missing out the basic essence of the POW Act 91.
Okay, sir.
Wherein it says, except for the Ram Mandir dispute. If I am not wrong, it's written specifically.
And sir, in exception made in 3A, I have read out the exception to you.
No, you can interfere the law as per your wishes. Let the court interfere the law as per its education. We all accept whatever the court will say. We accepted the Ram Mandir verdict. We will accept the Gyanvapi verdict. Don't be in any type of doubt on that issue. But when you are citing the POW Act, please also cite this, that it was specifically mentioned in the Act, except for Ram Mandir.
Yes, sir, because
all the other places of worship will be covered by the POW Act.
Even the
Now, Rahul, please, if you permit me, the basic important point that I am coming here. After the Nehru-Liaquat Pact of 1950s, wherein Hindus and Muslims were given permission to go either way, Pakistan or in India, the Muslims of India stayed back. There were some specific guarantees given to them in the constitution, like the Waqf Act. Now you see,
Mr. Chaudhary, the Waqf Act actually empowers a community to take over any land, even the land of another community, if it thinks that it, of course it does, sir. And sir, again I will read out the clause, then you will say it is your interpretation. I don't know what to say here. You put a potato in my mouth every time. Anyhow, viewers, the fact is, okay, the fact is, viewers, fine, Mr. Chaudhary, you are absolutely right. I rest my case. Look, viewers, just think about it. It just makes for sound logical reasoning. If a place of worship doesn't matter to you, if it is only a sign, an eyesore in your brother's community, why won't you let it go? As children we are taught, let it go, bhai. If someone wants something more than you, let it go. It's a sign of maturity. Let it go. I will once again, viewers, read out this great constitutionalist. Since he is talking about the constitution, Mr. Chaudhary, stirring words of Begum Aizaz Rasool. I feel that it is in the interest, she said, of minorities to try to merge themselves into the majority community. It is not going to be harmful to Muslims, I assure them, because in the long run it will be their interest to win the goodwill of the majority community. Viewers, I leave you with her words. You can make what you want to.